Our next speaker will talk about an interesting topic on one of the tools for biosecurity. He has 27 years in practice and technical service. He is Boehringer Ingelheim's Senior Global Technical Manager for PERS. Without further ado, to talk about combat, one of the tools, Dr. Poul Rathkjen.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Carlo, and I'm really happy to be here again at Asian Perspective. And today I'm very proud to present a new tool that has been put together by the PERS Solutions team. The PERS Solutions team is Xavi De Paz and Niang Huang, myself. And we are collaborating with others in the team, like Oliver Duran, you heard earlier this morning, Enrique Bramdaca from the US, and also Dale Poulsen was helping us. So I think we represented globally in the efforts of putting this tool together. And it fits perfectly into what we just heard from Otaka, that without any measuring, no managing. So we all know that high biosecurity and ideal management, it's a constant battle. It does not come by itself. There's a lot of different parts to it. And some of the tools you have seen and mentioned already, they talk about external biosecurity and internal biosecurity, which of course has to be optimal. We also know that location is extremely important. If you are close to a neighbor that is not able to control PERS, you are more likely to get it yourself, even if you're doing a good job. We know that we need to take semen into consideration. There are several stories of boa studs that has broken with PERS and infected several herds with PERS virus. Gilt replacement is a very common source of PERS introduction. Pig flow is important. And then in the end, I think we have to say that probably people are maybe the most important. So none of this can be done or put out in real life unless we have the right people and they have an understanding of how to make it. Combat. It's a comprehensive online management biosecurity assessment tool, very easy to understand. And the aim of combat is to analyze and visualize, and then benchmark, and also very important guide to improve the biosecurity and management in pig farms. So here we're not looking only at biosecurity, but also management and pig flow. It's already available to you, so you can download it from the different app stores, so either from App Store, Google Play, the Chinese App Store. It's already, if you go into the settings, it's available in different European languages and very soon also in Chinese and Korean language. By default, when you open it, it's in English, but you have some other choices as well. If you don't manage to scan these, you can just type Combat PERS into your app store and then you will find it easily. We put the combat tool into the 5-step approach. I still want to mention that. That's been mentioned before, that the 5-step approach is crucial to have a systematic approach to PERS control. And just briefly mention that it's important here that you identify your goals and that everybody agree on the shared goals. It can be PERS elimination or PERS eradication. And it might be also, if you are collaborating with others, that you need to discuss and agree what you actually want to achieve. You have to determine your current status. Without knowing what's going on your farm, you have no chance to correct it or improve. And then I'll come back to the third step where we have put combat. But with those three put together, you're able to develop some solutions options, and they include both biosecurity, management, vaccination protocols, etc. And then, of course, you should implement the solutions you have chosen and then monitor. And monitoring, again, as it was mentioned in the previous speak, is extremely important. So we have put combat is a tool we put together here to help to facilitate step number 3, to understand the current constraints on a farm. And when you have understood these constraints that you have, and you have recognized the risk of high risk you are able to set up specific training programs, and they should be put in place to improve the capabilities and also address limitations on the production system. And you have to use all the current knowledge about PRRS, disease transmission, and epidemiology, and we heard some of that already today. So what is combat? Combat consists of 55 detailed questions, and they can be answered directly in the app that you're on your smartphone or a tablet, or you can answer them online in a web tool. And then the relative risk of not being able to prevent, control, or manage PRRS infection is calculated in 4 different categories and visualized in 4 different categories. The 15 questions related to internal risks, 20 questions related to external risk, 7 questions related to location, and then we have 13 questions related to management and pig flow. And these questions are all based on the guidelines we have put together in the 10 golden management rules for PRRS control. The answers are not weighed equally, so there are different weights in the different answers. And these are calculated based on both published literature, but also previous assessments, and that has been carried out by BI veterinarians. So when you have answered these questions, you will have your results visualized. In this case, we're looking at how it's visualized if you use an app. So on your smartphone, you see it here. And we have on the x-axis, we have the scoring of the internal risk. On the y-axis, we have the scoring of the external risk. So that's deciding where the circle is placed in the chart. Then you see that here the circles have different colors, and they are related to the location of the farm. So if you are in a bad location, you can say if you have a high risk of receiving PRRS or uncontrolled PRRS from others, you have a red circle. And if you're in a very good location, so you have no neighbors nearby, for example, 5 kilometers, and there's no risk of receiving PRRS by air transmission, you will have a green dot, a green circle. And finally, we have put the circle size to visualize the management risks. In this case, a large circle means you have a high risk management. So if you are in the upper right corner, that means that you have high internal risk, you have a high external risk, and you have a large circle in that corner, you will also have a bad management. And if it's then also red, it's in a poor location, then you're quite bad off. We believe that poor and risky management and pig flow behaviors, they are considered to be the most important. So it might be that you are able to control PRRS from outside, but if you have a PRRS circulating in the farm, because of a poor management and pig flow, you will not be able to control PRRS anyway. So that's why we put management as the most visual part of it, the circle size. And it's obvious that if you have a high risk location, so you have a red circle, it's even more important that you have a very good management. So as we all know, size matters. In this case, big is beautiful, but small is better. So when you put it together, when you have your chart here, you're able to different kinds of benchmarking. So if you press the icon in the upper right corner, you can choose either to benchmark against the projects you have put together, that's on the left side, or you can choose to benchmark against all the combats that has been done globally. And very soon there will be another additional feature, so you would also be able to benchmark not globally, but just about benchmark against countries, or your own country. So that might be that you feel it relevant, that you're only competing, so to say, against farms that has a similar situation as your own. And how to use Combat? When you have downloaded the app, it will come up like this, and you can use the login if you have that already, or you can create your own username and password. Username would be your email address, and then you create a password. You can actually use the same username and password in a web tool. In the web tool, you have more opportunities. In the web tool, the 5step.com, you have the 5-step process. So here you have some possibilities to go in and look at your farm in other details. First step, set your goals, determine the current status. Combat is here placed in step 3. There are some suggestions for implementing the tools, and also at the end you can implement and monitor. In the step 5 here, you can monitor both production data, but you can also monitor diagnostic data. And this is how the questionnaire looks like if you open it in the web tool. So when you have downloaded your app, you got in, you got a username, you have to create a new account. So a new account can be one individual farm, but it can also be a production system. And this tool is available free for everybody. So it's for veterinarians or producers. Everybody can download it. And it could be that you have several farm sites in your production system. So here you would create a new account, and then you can add individual sites by adding a new farm. And then you will have to complete the questionnaire for each individual site. And when you have completed Combat, the box will be ticked up. So here you have a tick off. And you will also see you have a site here that's not ticked, and that's because there's not been done a Combat yet. And as soon as you're done the Combat, you have the circle in the chart visualizing that Combat. You can go into details and get an immediate feedback on the Combats or the questionnaire. And you can also, if you just put your cursor on the circle, you have some immediate ideas on how good your biosecurity management was in this pig farm. And as I said, in the upper right corner, if you press this icon, you can decide how you want to benchmark. So let's try an example. Let's Combat. So we have a farm here, very nice farm. Seems like also being a good location in the suburb. So let's have a look at the external biosecurity in this case. And we see here now we're modeling the farm, and we can move a bit closer. There's a feeding truck here. And when we come close to that, we see that maybe it could be quite difficult to keep that clean. There's also a very nice truck wash. And then you get the questions. So here you see you are asked about the frequency of the truck wash and the washing frequency, how often the truck wash is loaded. And then when you have answered the questions and all of them, you you open your details, and then you get an immediate feedback. And then the questions or the answers, the feedback is in different categories. So we have 4 different categories here. We have the very high risk, we have high risk, we have medium risk, and low risk. So in this case, we're just looking at the high risk. That's the ones we want to address first. And in this case, it says that the question was if disinfectants used on vehicles to used for transport of animals to market or collection points. And in this case, the answer was that there's no disinfectant used or it's unknown. And to get the low risk here, to have it in the best category, the answer should be that disinfectants are used. We also know that drying time following a wash is extremely important to control pus on transportations. And in this case, the answer was that no requirements were to dry the vehicle. And to get the optimal answer here, you should have assisted drying technology to dry and wash vehicles. There's some high risk. So this is talking about the washing frequency. And in this case, the answer was that it's at least every 20 loads. I don't think that's too often. And to have the optimal answer here, it should be between every load. But there are also some low-risk answers. So in this case, they never use the same vehicle to deliver feed to PRRS positive, negative, and naive farms, which is the optimal answer. Perimeter fence, it's a good thing to keep uninvited guests out. We have an uninvited guest here outside the perimeter fence, but it seems like it has found the hole in the gate. So it's not enough to have some buildings surrounded by perimeter fence. It should be working and it should surround all the buildings. Entrance of people. In this, we recommend to have a downtime of 24 hours or 2 nights. And I noticed that Otaku was mentioning only 1 night, so maybe we can discuss that. But to have the optimal answer in combat here, you have to have a downtime of 2 nights. And there should be no direct access to the farm. In this case, the answer was that there was a direct access and there's no defined dirty and clean area. And we know that what is normally known as a Danish entrance is a good thing, where you change booth and clothes and wash. I live in Germany now, but at the beginning of October, I was in Denmark, and I just wanted to have some nice pictures from a farm. I know this farm, it's a multiplier, normally considered as having a very good biosecurity. But just when I was standing outside and taking this photo, I saw a guy coming out at the door. Don't know if you see him here. And the Danish entrance that is actually on this farm is not here. It's on the other side of the building. So this guy should not come out of this door. So waited a bit, and then actually also another guy came out. This guy, he went in that door, which is also not the Danish entry. And when we also have a look here, maybe you see clear that here we have the feed in the farm, and this gate is just open. So it's open to whatever rodents or birds or whatever wanted to go in there. You'll hear about P-Track later on today, but this was a case where it could be really good to have P-Track to discover events that you do not expect or should not happen. And this is even in a case where we think it's optimal. I want to mention this because when you do the combat, you'll probably ask the manager or someone else taking care of the farm, and then he would probably answer what's happening in 90% of the cases. But when we're talking about biosecurity and management, we are actually more interested in what's happening 1 or 2 or 5% of the cases, where all the worst things are happening. We know that semen source is extremely important as well, and there are also some questions related to that. And to have the optimal answer, you should, of course, get the semen from a currently negative farm. Cross-fostering is extremely important, how it's done. We have, in most cases, more live-born piglets than the sows are actually able to take care of. And in some extreme cases, we are getting closer to 18 or 20 live-born. And we know that most sows still only have 14 glands, so they will never be able to take care of that many pigs. So we need to create some nurse sows. This is the two-step nurse sow system that has been recommended by the Danish Pig Research Center. It was presented by Flemming Thorup in Korea at the IPVS. It's quite simple, but you have to do it in the correct way. Or you could say it in the other way, if you're not able to do this in the correct way, you will probably already be in trouble. We actually start a bit backwards. So we have some 21-day-old piglets. Those pigs are weaned, and they are put immediately to the nursery. We do not want to have weaned piglets in the farrowing room. Then this sow that had these piglets is moved back to pigs that is 7 days old. And this pig, that sow that had these 7-day-old pigs, they receive these surplus of pigs. In most farms, the number of live-borns would be more or less the same every week. It can change a bit or vary a bit from week to week, but you know more or less how many pigs are live-born. So you also know more or less how many nurse sows you would need every week. So that cannot be a surprise. I visited many farms that had this surprise every week. Oh shit, again we have to make nurse sows. But it cannot be a surprise, so you should already be prepared from that. When you put the sows into your farrowing room, you should leave some crates open, and you know more or less how many you would need, and then you're actually ready to do this. So there's some important questions also in combat related to this, talking about the cross-fostering. And in this case, the answer was that cross-fostering pigs from different litters are commingled, and they are mixed with other age groups, and then they are also moved to different rooms. But at least it takes place less than 72 hours. So this is, of course, a high risk when you commingle from different litters and mix with different age groups. But you get a better risk score if you do it less than 72 hours. Also, the weaned pigs in the farrowing room, we know that's a high risk to maintain PRRS virus in a farm. And I think it was interesting to hear from John Harding that the biggest pigs might be the ones that's actually containing the most virus. Because when we have these weaned pigs in the farrowing room, it's very often because we need some sows to cross-foster. So what is happening here? We have some 21-day-old piglets. The sow is taking out because it needs to take care of younger pigs. The most likely sow to go here is a sow that have already large pigs. And there's some study indicating that PRRS can be under quite good control as long as the pigs are with a sow, as long as they are sows lactating, but as soon as they're weaned, they start to spread. Maybe there are only 1 or 2 positive pigs in a litter, but all of a sudden the litter mates become susceptible, and now all of a sudden you can start to have the PRRS infected in other litters. And that's a very very common way of maintaining purse in a farm. And also, pigs of different age should not be commingled. So that's why we find these, when we have these answers related to continuous flow or holding pigs back for weaning quality, we get a very high risk score in the management. Cleaning and disinfections is very important. In this case, they did everything they should. They used water, detergent, disinfectant, and they were also drying out. And now it looks like that afterwards, and they get a very high score, or a low score here actually, so a low risk. Loadout areas, there are some questions related to the loadout areas. In this case, there's no restrictions on the truck driver access. This is also a real picture. It was just taken. Wanted to show a small video how it's actually done. And again, what very often happens is that one of these pigs that are loaded, it somehow regrets that it went out there and want to go back into the farm. Now the interesting thing is, who of these guys are following this pig back? In this case, they both did. And that should never happen. Dead animals, the same day I was in that farm, it was a very good location. So they actually had a location 1 kilometer away from the farm where the dead animals were disposed. The larger pigs and sows were under this green cover, and then small piglets in this bucket. But this was a windy day, and you see that the lid was open here. And now this was not that far away from the farm, so we had some access from birds here, and they could actually go back into the feeding unit, or the feeding room afterwards. Location, in this case we have a very nice location of a farm. In this case there's actually no farms in the near of 5 kilometers. This was a farm that became, all of a sudden, it was a multiplier herd with 1,000 sows and all the gills up to selling age. All of a sudden it became infected with PRRS virus. And we managed to eliminate it by using the low close modernize program. But it was kind of a mystery where it came from, since there was no neighbors nearby and it was a closed herd. So there's probably only one explanation here, that could be semen. So with combat, you see you get immediate feedback and according to the risk categories. And that helps you to discuss the risky behaviors on a farm and also prioritize the fields of importance and guide the improvements. And with that, you are able to set up training programs for the staff, and you have a unique chance here to show knowledge leadership in PRRS. So combat, it facilitates improved biosecurity and pig flow management practices by highlighting the most important risk areas to PRRS incidents. We heard that before, it's extremely important. And also facilitates the incorporation of measures to reduce the risk of new virus introduction from external, but also improve the ability to control the PRRS on farm or site or area by reducing the risk of internal breaks. And then you have the chance of anonymized visual benchmark, and that helps the producer to address the risky behaviors that affects the disease resilience on the actual production site. One last comment here from my side. It's important always to remember that the difference between success and failure in risk reduction in relation to both biosecurity and management, it's not determined by the details in a scoring report. So it's very nice to do a measure. It's also very nice to see a visualization. But actually, no improvements are seen before the constraints are understood and the mistakes that you detect are actually corrected and you actually change the risky behavior. So that is Combite. I hope you like it. You're welcome to use it. Thank you very much.